Hello, friends. This is Informed Dissent, and here is your news of the week for January 3rd. Happy New Year. This week, a federal appeals court blocked a lower court ruling that would have allowed California teachers to notify parents when students identify as transgender. The stay keeps school secrecy policies in place while the case moves forward, underscoring how aggressively courts are being asked to intervene in disputes over parental rights and gender policy in schools. Also this week, a group of federal employees filed suit against the federal government over the removal of insurance coverage for gender transition medical treatments. The lawsuit claims policy is discriminatory, while federal officials argue they are responding to mounting evidence that these interventions lack proven benefits and carry real risks, marking a significant shift in how pediatric gender medicine is being treated at the federal level. In Washington state, two voter initiatives, one restoring sex-based categories in school sports and another advancing parental notification and authority, surpassed the number of signatures required to qualify for the November 2026 ballot. Organizers report gathering hundreds of thousands of signatures despite widespread intimidation, property damage, and physical assaults against volunteers. The campaign has drawn national attention as a test of whether voters in deep blue states will push back directly against institutional gender policies. Also out of Washington, an investigation revealed that more than 20 Seattle area schools administered surveys to children as young as 10, asking about gender identity and sexual orientation, and then shared that data with third parties, including hospitals and government agencies. Parents say that they were not adequately informed about the nature of the questions or how the data was going to be used, prompting a federal investigation into student privacy and consent. And finally, the Washington Post published a profile of a male high school runner dominating girls' track events in Washington state, framing objections to his participation largely through the lens of poverty and personal hardship. Critics argue that the piece avoids examining the adults and institutions that placed a vulnerable boy into girls' sports while continuing to minimize the consequences for female athletes forced to compete against male bodies. This week on Informed Dissent, we're focusing on Washington State. In the first segment, we'll dig into Washington Post article and the broader media framing around boys and girls sports. And then in the second segment, we're going to be joined by Brian Heywood of Let's Go Washington to talk about the ballot initiatives, the intimidation campaign against his volunteers, and what direct democracy looks like when institutions refuse to listen to their voters. We hope everyone enjoyed the break last week and that you had a wonderful holiday season. We are back for 2026. That is your news of the week, and on to the show.
Happy New Year! Welcome to Informed Dissent in 2026. We are so excited to be with you today. I am Jamie Reed, whistleblower from a pediatric gender center, joined with my two regular co-hosts.
Hi, we're introducing ourselves this week, Lauren.
Oh, well, I'd like to introduce myself as Lauren Legere, co-host of Informed Dissent podcast.
And also the
thank you, the co-director of the LGB Courage Coalition.
Yes. And I am Cori Cohn, according to the internet, a young man who was harmed by gender interventions.
Spring chicken.
I'm actually 50, so I'm not a young man.
Spring chicken.
Yeah.
Any resolutions? Do y'all do resolutions?
No, not typically. I think it's a good idea for people to resolve, to change, but I think it's also a little hazardous that people are encouraged to only think about changing one time a year instead of evaluating on a continual basis about what they need to do to be a little bit different in their lives.
It's a good point. I agree. Well, today we have a very interesting Washington Post article that we would like to discuss. We are going to put an archive link in the show notes in case you have not read this story. And we would like to encourage everyone, if you have a partner at home, a significant other, your cats, you really should try to read this piece out loud in the voice that it was written, which is that of a fairy tale. This is a fairy tale story that really is served best read out loud like you're reading it to small children, a la Cinderella.
I feel like, I don't mean to contradict you, Jamie, but I feel like for our audience that we need to do a little bit of a better faith introduction to this.
Fine.
Okay. So now this is what it looks like to have multiple viewpoints on a podcast. I think that's helpful to call that out specifically. Okay. This is an article written by Casey Parks, a beat reporter for the Washington Post. And
what's her beat, Cori?
LGBTQIA stories. And
that's a very big beat.
I'll come back to that in just a moment. Well, when you realize it's just Q, ultimately, that narrows it quite a lot. But this is a piece that is about a young man who calls himself Veronica Garcia, who is grew up in poverty and found some meaning and purpose in his life after feeling that he was a girl and joining a Spokane, Washington girls track team and finding some success and camaraderie and even meaning, I would say, in being a target of attacks. So there's some validation about his life purpose in that dynamic.
Okay.
And this is basically a puff piece told entirely and uncritically from his perspective about his past as a child in poverty, and I would argue child abuse and neglect, and
yes.
And his redemption arc in becoming a top female high school athlete. So that is the story. Is that a fair description of the story?
It's a fair description of the goal that yes.
Okay. So I'm just setting that as the,
yeah.
That's what this is about.
Okay, this story popped up. I don't normally read the Washington Post, so I think the first place I saw it was Kara Dansky's tweet on it, and I immediately did what I usually do, which is nowadays I won't read the piece until I figure out who wrote it. And so I started trying to figure out who is Casey Parks. And then I wrote a couple of mean tweets, and I am here to formally apologize for calling Casey Parks a late bloomer. I am sorry that I inferred that she bloomed late because she kissed a girl for the first time at 18.
Oh, I thought you were going to apologize because she hasn't bloomed yet.
I don't know.
She's in her 40s,
40,
right?
She's also 42, which I also apparently pissed her off because I inferred that she is half my age. But yes, because so a little
half
bit
your age, Jamie.
Because of her childlike thinking.
This is starting to become a pile-on. Let's.
You're right. Yeah. You're right. Right. She apparently is a great writer. My favorite sentence in the piece was a very short sentence. I think it said, she simply desired to frolic.
The subject, Veronica.
Yes. Okay, let's be serious. Okay, this piece was a really big problem.
Yeah. In what way?
So this
piece. I'm sorry for interrupting. Do you mind if I add just a little bit more context? Because
of course, go. I think you want to explain why this piece was it's leading up to something occurring.
No, I want to talk about something different, which is that I have been the subject of a previous article written by Casey Parks that was also published in the Washington Post as a news article. and it concerned the Ohio bill, which outlaws certain procedures on minors, to which I showed up to testify, and at which I was confronted by a former friend and ally of mine, Cori Callahan. Cori Callahan was one of the very first female detransition stories. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago now that she was had some media coverage. I think that Katie Herzog did a piece that featured Cori Callahan. And Cori Callahan is, I think, a professional therapist in Ohio. And my belief is that her career trajectory was negatively affected by her advocacy for detransitioners, and that she's done a 180 pivot. This is my impression, that is also bolstered by the previous article that Casey Parks wrote. And what happened in Ohio is that after all the testimony was completed, Cori, who'd been text messaging me during the proceedings, approached me and accused me of laughing at the pain that I was inflicting, and then turned her back and stormed off before I had a chance to even reply to her. And this was covered in the Washington, like that was covered in the Washington Post. I was portrayed as laughing about it. And Casey Parks never contacted me before writing about this. So it was entirely from Cori's perspective, but it was presented as a news article. So I never had any sort of chance to respond or reply.
And she did not. So Casey wrote an article that referenced you, but did not reach out to you for comment.
And also implied my motivations.
But did not reach out to you for comment.
Never reached out to me for comment. Okay, and when I mentioned this on X, she didn't reply to me at all, but she took her account private right away, and it's been private on X ever since.
How? That's not journalistic practices.
No, and I reached out to an editor who I know at Washington Post, and he said, you'd have to contact that editor directly. I can't help you with that.
Okay. So
I didn't follow up because I felt like, it doesn't matter. I mean, it matters a lot, but I'm helpless to do anything to change it. That's really what I mean.
I want to add another thing about Casey Parks, because I'm not trying to do a pile on here. I invited her on today. I really hoped she would come. I wanted to talk about the piece with her. Her DMs, were open, and she did not reply directly by DM to me, but I really do want to have conversations with the people who are writing pieces like this. This is not just, let's make fun of them or bitch about the piece. I do think there really needs to be a dialogue here. So, Lauren, I want to bring you in because you seem to react pretty strongly to the piece.
Well, yeah, I mean, she totally avoided talking about anything really concrete or scientific. It was basically just a puff piece. Well written, I suppose, but to me it felt like was really removed from reality. I mean, even when they're talking about Veronica's top competitor, this girl Lauren, they said she's one of the best athletes in the state. Whatever, she's one of the best female athletes in the state. She's second only to this boy. They call this boy a girl. They make no reference to the fact of what trans actually is. They're presenting this as if this boy is some subset type of girl. They're not talking about at all what is happening to him medically. And she didn't even try to present fairly, in my opinion, the perspective of these young female athletes who are being, blown out of the water. I mean, they talk about the best female athlete, Lauren Matthews, one of the best female runners in Eastern Washington, and she came in second to this boy who was ranked, I mean, did he even do they say?
417th. He was
Thank you.
ranked
Okay.
417th.
417th when he ran for the boys.
Yes.
Yeah.
They did mention in the piece, Casey does mention that she reached out to Lauren and Lauren refused to comment or discuss with her. That also to me shows a real significant problem in the way that these issues have been covered. If you will not get it's known to Lauren, that runner, that she would not get a fair shake, which is why she wasn't going to work or talk with Casey. I want to talk about Veronica's medical care and treatment.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing about this article. It's like the author goes on about how disadvantaged Veronica is, that she's underfed, that she's living in poverty. Um, she shares a bed with both her mother and her sister, and they live in a crammed studio apartment. She doesn't get enough to eat. He rather doesn't get enough to eat. This is how she's describing this person. And
Yes, having to eat expired power bars for a
right.
meal.
So, in any other setting, if a minor came into a medical setting with these problems, depressed, malnourished, clothes that don't fit, the first thing that these people would have done, should have done, was get this boy some social services, not put him on hormones that are going to chemically castrate him. Like, that's crazy. It's crazy that we're doing this to young people. This kid is clearly disadvantaged in so many ways, dealing with mental illness and depression.
Yeah.
And what the medical institutions, what his parents, I'm assuming, have done, are say, we're going to compound that with making your life even harder by giving you medicine that's going to lifelong be detrimental to your health. So not medicine, but it's a complete failure of the system to protect a vulnerable young man. And
Okay,
he is a vulnerable young man.
can I pause for a minute and talk about what the actual response from the social work unit from the hospital setting should have been? And then
Yeah, please.
also my concerns about what actually happened with whoever this doctor was, that this is part of where the reporting, I think, really fell apart. So here's the paragraph. I'm going to just read this paragraph and then I'll go into it a little bit. So after the track season ended, Veronica asked her doctor, we don't know what kind, we don't know if this was a specialist, if she had some kind of chromosomal disorder. She had gone through puberty, but her hips widened like a girl's. I've seen many photographs of this person. That's not accurate. That is a part of this young person's thought process, but that did not occur. That is not accurate. And her face was almost perfectly smooth, meaning she couldn't grow facial hair. She wasn't having any facial hair coming in. Her mind, sorry, this is so hard when you're reading it. Her mind felt like a girl's too, she confessed. The doctor asked Veronica if she thought she might be transgender, and something inside her sharpened. That was it. I had seen Cori froze. Hopefully he comes back on. This is where we actually needed a reporter to do their job. Who was the doctor? Why did the doctor plant this seed, say this to this kid? If you followed the terrible WPATH standards of care, like, this is not it. This is not how it's supposed to go. They go on to say Veronica let her hair grow. She tried out a few girls' names, but she did not make any immediate medical decisions. I'm sorry. I thought we had all agreed that these were the parents that were making the medical decisions. Yet the author here is saying putting the onus completely on a child. The child did not make any medical decisions. A few weeks later, she decided she wanted to run with the girls her junior year. So this is a sophomore in high school. Later in the piece, when this young man does go on to start what they refer to as a testosterone suppressant, my guess is it's going to be spironolactone, or bicalutamide. The paragraph says, in the early months of 2024, between the cross country and track season, quote, with her mother's blessing, Veronica asked her doctor if she could start medications to suppress her testosterone and boost her estrogen. That is not an informed consent process. Was mom not in the room? Did mom even go to these doctor's appointments? Mom gave her blessing to ask the doctor. We are told over and over again that these are adults making these medical decisions on behalf of their children, and yet we have an article published in the Washington Post, a national story, where the journalist does nothing, no due diligence to figure this out. If this was presented, this needed to be verified by medical records. Casey Parks needed to reach out and say to Veronica, I need to see your medical records. I need to understand who actually provided the informed consent. Where was the risk benefit applied? Where were you diagnosed with this? What therapist? There's no mention of months-long therapy. There's no mention of any standard of care being followed in this case. This is egregious.
But so many of the people that are true believers in all of this, they don't see this as a condition. Like, if you say you're trans, and you need to be. I know
that, but they also pretend like Casey Parks is going to pretend like out the other side of her mouth, and a bunch of readers of this are going to pretend like there's a standard of care that's followed, that people are given adequate, good, informed consent, that parents are making the decision. This author laid out directly what I have been saying for the beginning, which is if you believe that there is a condition, that there are standards, this is not meeting them. Even the bare minimum, this is not meeting those standards. This is outside of standard of care 8. I don't believe in WPATH. I don't believe it's a quality standard of care. But if they're saying that's what they are supposed to be upholding, this is not following WPATH standard of care. You don't suggest to a sophomore in high school, because they ask if they might have a chromosomal disorder, oh, I think you're trans. A doctor planting that? This is horrible care. And then this is again why I would like to know. I wanted to ask Casey these questions. Was this child seen by a clinic in a hospital? Because if so, they have a social work division. My job in a gender center as the social worker was that if I had a patient come in like this, who is malnourished, who didn't have adequate food, housing, or clothing, that was my job to take care of this kid. That day with this kid, I would have filled out a food stamp application. I would have given him and his parents a voucher to go to Goodwill to purchase clothing, which I would have had access to as a social worker, not licensed clinical, but working in that role. There are programs. We are talking about a state that is apparently one of the left liberal socialistic, there's a million programs. This kid was not given any sort of real care. Instead, they were given either Spiro or bicalutamide and estrogen. And then the other layer here that really frustrates the hell out of me is Casey Parks also does not interrogate. She was embedded. She was at these track meets. Did she not ever ask the track coach, is this child getting free subsidized hot breakfast, hot lunch at school? In my own kids' school district, my kids, just because they're adopted out of foster care, get free breakfast, lunch. On the weekends, they're sent home. If we needed it, they could be sent home with a packet, a bag full of food every Friday. So the entire system around this kid completely neglected to care for this child as a society and instead medicalized their body. These are the things that I'm so enraged at this article about.
Yeah. So I'm sorry I missed a couple of minutes. My cats unplugged my internet connection.
Do that!
Troublemakers.
I can't even. In this article where Parks is covering Garcia here, and this critical, like, this is the big race, right? She can I read this?
Just read
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Macaroni. Okay, here it is. So a championship rematch. This is covering Garcia beating this woman again. More than 10,000 people bought tickets for the season's final meet. Everywhere Veronica could see, people were eating hot dogs and hot Cheetos, popsicles, and bowls of macaroni piled high with what looked like barbecue pork. It might have been texture, vegetable protein. We don't, like, Casey Parks is being diligent here, not reporting that it was pork. It could have been. Garcia had only eaten
right at the facts. She was only publishing the facts. She didn't know for
only
sure.
the facts. Yeah, it's important. You'll only write what you can verify. I'm sorry, I'm editorializing. So the last sentence in this paragraph is Garcia had only eaten a few packets of Spanish rice that week. So here's somebody who's competing in a race who'd had only a few packets of Spanish rice over the whole course of the week. So the point that you're making, Jamie, like this stretches credibility, right? Or credulity, rather. Do we really think that there's a boy who's had 3 meals that week and is just beating the pants off of girls in a race, and that all the adults are just watching this going, this is fine, this is okay? It doesn't even ring true.
I have seen neglect. This could actually be true. However, if so, what it is pointing out is that in some ways, our society has completely lost its mind. That we somehow have set up a system to subsidize giving this young man estrogen, but not feed him. And Lauren made the point earlier, there is a question of, this is a child abuse and neglect situation. This is a situation where the mother should have been hotlined. The child should have been hotlined on, not medicalized. And one of the things that came up in the gender clinic where I worked in, why a multidisciplinary team is supposed to exist, is because there were patients where I would tell the endocrinologist, you should not start this patient on whatever medical process you want to start them on, because the other elements of their life are not stable enough to have a transition be successful. So pretend for a moment that you believe in gender medicine, that you think that this kid's soul is truly a girl. You want that transition to be successful. A social work multidisciplinary team would say this transition will never be successful for this child when they are not basically fed, housed, or clothed. Because in order to be on a regimented weekly medication requires parental involvement, requires that you pick up the medication at the pharmacy, requires that you know how to make a refill. If you cannot feed your kid, you are not going to do those things. And those are cases where I would say to the clinician, regardless of what you believe about the gender dysphoria, if you believe it, this person, again, does not meet a standard of care, should not be transitioned. You have to address the fundamental basic needs in someone's life before you undergo something like that. That's why when we have kids who are getting cancer treatments and their parents cannot afford a place to live, we have Ronald McDonald houses set up so that their parents come and live in a hotel-like setting where we know that the family is fed and clothed and housed, because we don't do these things to kids in medical settings unless we take care of those basic needs first. And if need be, we hotline those kids and we take them out of their families. Because nobody should be in America running a race or not, like living on a couple packets of Spanish rice a week. And I am horrified that Casey Parks or that the Washington Post believed that they were telling. I'm just really upset by this piece for this kid and for the community. The community none of this should have happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think my first reaction was, how did this even get past an editor? Because it's very clearly biased. Like, if you know nothing of this subject and you read this,
This is a trans Cinderella tale.
You think that some girl with some kind of not typical illness is being discriminated against on the track team at high school. If you know nothing,
starving.
Right. If you know nothing about this, you're reading this and thinking, man, this girl Lauren's a meanie head. She's such a bitch. Like, that's the problem here, is that the Washington Post took no responsibility to actually give their readers the ability to make their own judgment on this situation, because they did not report on it fairly or accurately. I mean, this is a disgrace. It really is. It's a disgrace that this got. If it was published as an opinion piece, maybe, but what section was this in? Was this the LGBTQIA?
It's national news.
It's national news.
It's national news.
Right. The same place where the story about where I was mentioned and got published. National news. Same format.
There's another aspect to Lauren, the runner, though, here too, that I found really there was a class element here too. So Lauren, the runner who worked her ass off, was a soccer player, track runner. Casey pokes at her later by saying, "Oh, Veronica saw photos of her on social media where she's in, two different college jerseys and how she's got college offers." And Casey also writes about how she's trying to get at like how all sports are not, there's no equal playing field because some of these girls could afford a personal trainer or shoes that fit. The whole thing is set up that we're supposed to feel sorry for Veronica and feel some sort of weird anger at the families who worked their asses off to make sure that their kids had proper shoes. Like, what? I don't get the leftist perspective here anymore on.
It's just Casey Parks' perspective, to be fair. But this is an advocacy piece, not a news piece, right? The purpose of it. There's the overt claims and the covert claims in this piece, or perspectives that we're supposed to understand, right? So the overt themes here are, look at this brave girl who's overcoming all of these obstacles, overcoming poverty, overcoming neglect, overcoming a system that hates her, overcoming the president who is trying to destroy her, the 4 middle-aged women. I thought that was a pretty interesting observation on Parks's part. Can I read that?
Yeah.
On the day of the final, while 4 middle-aged women protested outside, Veronica's coach ushered her into the stadium through a side entrance. Why does Casey Parks need to say 4 middle-aged women? Anyway, it doesn't. It matters, but we can't answer it.
I mean, the whole thing. There's a section in here where
Yeah.
she talks about hold on, let me see if I can find it.
Yeah. Can I finish my point here really quick, though?
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. So these are the overt themes, which are look at how hateful the people are that oppose this. Look at how wonderful the subject is, right? But then there's a number of I would describe them as covert themes, right? And these are the themes that the writer Parks wants you to think about subconsciously. So one of them is that if you think that only boys should be, or if you think only girls should be competing in girl sports, then you are inflicting violence on these boys who want to compete in girl sports, right? It's conflating a viewpoint on the inclusion policy with hatred. That's one of these covert themes. Another one is covertly, she wants you to discredit the idea that these are sex-based categories and embrace the idea that these are gender identity-based categories. So continually, Parks is saying, yeah, he's a boy, but this all this stuff really makes him a girl, including the passage that Parks mentions about the doctor. I'm going to read this also. After the track season ended, Veronica asked her doctor if she had some kind of chromosomal disorder.
Yep. I read this while you were gone. Yeah.
Well, my cat's knocked out the.
Oh, no, we don't. Keep going. Keep reading it because it really is important.
Right. So she had gone through puberty, but her hips widened like a girl's.
They didn't.
And her face was almost perfectly smooth. Her mind felt like a girl's too, she confessed to the doctor, I suppose.
This is supposed to be a 15-year-old boy at the time. This is the thing.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I know plenty of 15-year-old boys with full beards and.
No, there are some. Especially, if her father is
but
Hispanic,
there's plenty that are not.
If his father's Hispanic, maybe he thinks he should be having some, little mustache growth because that's pretty common. Here. What? It's pretty common. And,
Go ahead.
He didn't have that yet. And then so the idea here is connecting this back to this covert theme. Well, the doctor, who was never interviewed, whose testimony we only understand from what Veronica's conveyances to Parks is, this is probably medical, right? So this covert theme here is to delegitimize any type of viewpoint that this is a choice that the subject of the piece is making.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah.
And to undermine our own skepticism about how people arrive at a transgender identity. This is meant to cut off any sort of arguments about it. So this piece is purely an advocacy piece, and it's designed to turn off in our brains certain instincts that we have about the topic. And for the three of us, our brains are not going to be turned off by this. What we really should do is have a fourth member of this podcasting team whose brain is turned off so that we have multiple viewpoints on this. That's a little bit of subtweeting here, I guess.
Yeah, you're subtweeting.
What's that?
Yeah, this is a subtweet, but
that's a subtweet. Yeah.
I mean, we invited Casey Parks on.
Yeah, we did. We tried. We're not supposed to think about this issue in any way except for the way that Casey Parks and her editor want us to think about it.
Lauren, I know you were going to read a quote. Can I just interject Cori for just a second? Yeah. Cori, I do think, I don't know if it was Casey, there was a crack here. They were giving us a tiny bit of a crack. where Veronica
Yeah, I
himself,
felt like I was on crack. Keep going.
Veronica himself
Yeah.
they tried to use Veronica to give a possible, oh, here's the middle ground. There is a boy in another district who was going to play, I believe it was basketball,
Right.
and was claiming to be a girl. And Veronica even said, in his naivety, or lack of understanding, well, that isn't fair because I did what was fair. I did the fair thing. I'm on the medicine, I'm on the drugs, so I can compete because my testosterone is suppressed. But that boy, who also says he's a girl, is not being fair because they're not on the medicine.
Yeah. Well, that makes perfect sense, though, right?
No, because
No, it makes perfect sense, right? So I have invested. I have done these things in order to defend my claim. So if I've made that investment, and this is a big thing in trans world, and I used to have this mentality about it too while I was still identifying as a trans woman. If you're not investing, if you're not making commitments, then we should not consider your claims to be the same as the claims that we're making. If I claim I'm a woman and I take estrogen and I have disfiguring surgeries, then that is proof that my claim is serious. And if you make the same claim and you don't do any of those things, that means that your claim is not serious. And I cannot have you in my category if your commitment is not the same as mine.
Which is just forcing more young men to medicalize. I mean, what's interesting is that Veronica says that he did run on the boys' track team and he wore a skirt and
Yes.
It was accepted.
And
And
nobody bothered him.
Right.
Nobody bothered him.
He didn't get beat up in the locker room. He got to run his skirt on the
Nothing happened to him except that he came in 471st.
What was really tragic is that
17.
skirt was 2 sizes too small.
Jesus.
But then there's another line in here. So yes, he's trying to like play that middle ground, like I'm doing everything I'm supposed to. So this I'm doing what's fair. I think that's what you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's another line in here where Veronica longed to ask Lauren what she thought a real girl was. Biology suggests it's far more complicated than chromosomes, Veronica knew. But she suspected she would never change anyone's mind about that. Okay, again, how does this get by your editor? Because this is fiction. This is straight up fiction. Biology suggests it's far more complicated than chromosomes. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Biology itself is saying that we are a sexually dimorphic species. Jesus Christ. Like, how does this idiocy get past an editor
Is it in
and
quotes?
they don't feel any shame about like
Lauren, the editor's complicit. This is
exactly, that's what I mean. Like
this is Casey Parks' editor. In fact, I blame the editor more than I blame Casey Parks because the editor
exactly that's what I mean. Yeah,
I would love to know who the editor is.
Casey Parks could have put this in, some fiction anthology, and I would have been like, great, whatever, wonderful writing. But this is being presented to the American public as factual.
Yeah.
And relevant when it is the opposite. It's not factual and it's not actually relevant to the issue. There's no perspectives of these girls except to demonize them in their actions when the other team got up with the keeps women's sports female.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have heard more from the 4 middle-aged women.
Me too. Me too. Right. Especially if they were middle-aged lesbians, because we all know it's going to be middle-aged lesbians that save us. Yeah.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
What else do we have to cover on this piece? Because I feel like I think we've pulled all the guts out of it
Okay,
and
so
Yeah,
thrown
it
them
was
into
just
the dish.
it's a terrible piece, and I'm just getting like more and more frustrated because how can we have hope that the Washington Post is going to put out an article that is factual if this is the way they edit their pieces? Like they're just it's just it's so frustrating to have to read things that are complete fiction that are being presented to the general public as fact and human interest pieces. If they wanted to do an actual factual human interest piece, they could be talking about how a young, probably gay man is being chemically castrated and told that he's a girl because he's effeminate. That's a human interest piece.
I know we're coming up on time, and I don't mean to divert from your point, Lauren, but I did
Sorry.
want to see if we had a few minutes to talk about something that's really one of my deepest interests. And
is it bacterial vaginosis?
yes, it is.
Oh my God.
Yes, okay, great. Okay, I'm so excited. I'm so excited that we get to talk about bacterial vaginosis. We have 10 minutes. Can I try to just do a quick overview? Do you both know what we're even talking about?
Yeah,
Yes, I would like you to do an overview because I'm not a medical professional. So when I read this article, I was like kind of confused,
Okay.
to be honest.
what
Okay.
is the article? What's the title
Okay.
of it?
I got this. I got this. All right. I was drinking my coffee this morning with the three annoying children because there still is no school because it's still winter break. I had enough time to read one article and I was like, wow, this looks amazing. The title is This Common Infection Was Thought to Affect Only Women. Now Doctors Know Better. Subtitle Gynecologists long viewed bacterial vaginosis as solely a woman's issue until a study that treated their male partners proved otherwise. Okay, real quick. I worked at a Planned Parenthood for like almost 5 years. I was the clinical manager. I freaking love STIs, sexually transmitted infections, and all about infectious disease. Okay, these are great faces. All right, so in the STI world, we have long known that if I say chlamydia or gonorrhea or herpes or HIV, we know that those are commonly sexually transmitted, usually through fluid. Okay, you all are laughing. This is really
I am.
serious medicine.
When I say chlamydia, you say clap. Chlamydia.
Clap,
Chlamydia.
clap.
We don't have enough time for this. Okay, so chlamydia, gonorrhea spread through the fluid, right? Okay. Um, HPV, herpes, simplex virus. Anyway, I'm getting lost in this. Let me go back. So
Yeah.
BV is basically one of the most common vaginal infections worldwide. So if you have BV, you guys are going to hate this. So if you go into the gynecologist or Planned Parenthood and you have BV, we pretty much know that you have BV and can diagnose it just by walking in because it has its own particular smell.
Oh my God. Okay. All right.
Okay, so it causes vaginas to be itchy and irritable and burny and have a weird grayish fluid discharge. And it's really uncomfortable. And we thought for years and years and years this was solely a woman's issue.
Yeah.
Because we also noticed that it doesn't always have to be sexually transmitted because sometimes it could come from like maybe you didn't have sex with somebody with a penis for like a really long time, but you wear yoga pants all the time and you swim a lot and it's a change in the pH in the vaginal area. Okay, so this article, I'm reading it today and it's great. Good science. We finally had a really good study that showed that if you treat the woman who has BV and you treat her male partner who has a penis with an oral antibiotic and a special wipe to wipe his penis off, we could decrease the problem of BV because the problem with women is we would treat the woman, she'd go and have sex again, often with the same partner, and end up with BV just kind of as a rotating cycle, and she'd just keep getting it over and over again.
Yeah.
One of the other things to point out is there are higher rates of BV in different populations.
Can I
So,
just ask a question?
yes.
Um, so is the male partner infected with BV, or I don't know how else to say this, is he just not like washing his junk?
No, we know so much more about how the microbiome works. It's not just, you can't just wash it off.
Well, okay, go on, go on. This
Did
is
you use
why I
hand
was very confused
sanitizer?
by go on.
So this is treated with antibiotics. The last resort treatment is actually boric acid, which is just a microbiome wipeout. So we would put boric acid on you to just
Yeah.
completely gut your microbiome out to try to let the good positive bacteria that you want it in balance to grow back. This is basically your microbiome is totally fucked over where the bad bacteria is just out of control. And it's not like you could just wipe the penis off. And anyway, our listeners are going to be like, what the hell are these people talking about? Okay. What does this have to do with trans? So I'm reading this article, and this article is really all about this advancement in gynecological care so that we could start doing partner treatment. So if a woman comes in with BV, we could send her home with an oral antibiotic to give to her male partner and the special microbial wipes, and we could see women's health get better. So I'm reading and reading, and I'm like, this is great. I'm so excited because this is what I lived my life about and I knew all the time. And also, I had people who worked at Planned Parenthood were talking about this 20 years ago, that we knew we had these concerns that BV is something that is essentially sexually transmitted. Okay, so I get down part of the article in, and this comes into again that overt versus covert, Cori.
Right. Yeah.
So they did something in this article that I think is on purpose. So they had to have it be about a trans identified woman.
All right.
So I'm going to read the
Is that the
offending.
male partner?
Oh, let me read the offending paragraph.
Okay.
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 All right. I'll start here. Quote, what we currently do for BV is so bad that people are jumping on this bandwagon, said Dr. Mitchell at Mass General. We're all desperate for something more. Yeah, that we now treat the male partner. For some patients, thinking of BV as an STI is liberating. One of Dr. Cigna's patients, a 25-year-old transgender man, a woman, who has struggled with chronic BV for nearly a decade, brought the study into his appointment in April after coming across it on social media. This next sentence is where I lost it. The man who asked not to be identified to avoid discrimination by future employers, not the transgender man, the man who asked not to be identified to avoid discrimination by future employers, said he always chafed at his doctor's insistence that BV was a vagina problem. Considering I pretty exclusively got it from sex, he said, it seemed a little bit like blamey to me. And
Yeah.
then
Got it from sex in your vagina.
yes.
Okie doke. Well, we live in the dark ages now.
Do you mind if can we call it just the front hole?
No,
So that we don't trigger the subject.
no.
But
And
again, this is so irresponsible because, again, if you're someone who doesn't understand what's happening here, you're just a casual reader, you're thinking, oh, bacterial vaginosis is a STI, and this guy just needs to get the penis wipes and he'll be fine. No,
He has a
I
vagina.
know. Exactly.
And then, okay,
It's nonsensical.
so I tweeted about this morning, and um, it's amazing because even the people who know, somebody tweeted back, it's just an open wound. It's self-inflicted mutilation to satisfy a perverse body fetish, New York Times. And I actually had to reply and I said, no, in this case, it's actually a vagina.
Yeah.
This person actually has a vagina.
Yeah, this is the female we're talking about.
Yes. And then I liked Glenna's tweet back. I'm imagining the truckloads of antibiotics doctors have prescribed this woman for her perpetually broken vagina instead of telling her to lay off the vagina breaking steroids. In which
But exactly, like could not the chronic
Yes.
bacterial vaginosis be
Yes.
from the atrophy of your vaginal canal because of the testosterone?
How
Yes.
could we know? How could we know?
But because we didn't bother to ask or care. And my reply was bingo. If they actually had any reason to talk about a trans-identified woman in this story, it should have been to say that because of their use of testosterone, they are at a higher risk for infections such as this and tissue damage. But no, there's no way that they're ever going to talk about that in the New York Times. And with that,
or the Washington Post.
or the Washington Post. So there we are. This has been your episode of bacterial vaginosis, and yes.
Yeah, we'll be back next week to talk more about penis wipes and vaginas.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Smell you later.
And we're back. I am Lauren Legere here with Jamie Reed, Cori Cohn, and our guest, Brian Heywood of Let's Go Washington. Hi, Brian.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. So we wanted to have you on just talk about the ballot initiative in Washington State. There's two of them. And maybe you can give our listeners an overview of exactly what a ballot initiative is and why it's so important that they understand that, especially in blue states like Washington.
Thank you. And that's a great place to start. In Washington State, in our Constitution, the folks that originally wrote it, I think they were sort of genius and had a lot of foresight because I believe they foresaw a time when a majority party would control the state so strongly that they wouldn't even care what their own partisan voters thought about. And so they gave this. They gave us two initiative processes. There's actually three things that the citizens can do to try to fix stupid laws that have been imposed by the legislature. The first, and I'll try to make this real quick, the first is an initiative to the people. And you have to gather, legally in the state, you have to gather about 308,000 valid signatures of registered voters. And that's the same for there's another initiative to the legislature, same number, but the initiative to the people, you start around May, you have to gather the signatures in about 2 months. It is a very tight timeline, but the benefit is two things. One is it goes on the ballot that following November right away. And the second is that the legislature can't overturn it for 2 years. That's not what we're doing. That's the first way, but it's harder. It's tighter and it costs more money. The second way is the initiative to the legislature. And you again have to gather 308,000 valid signatures. And let me take a tangent there for a moment. In order to get 308,000 valid signatures, you probably need closer to 380, 390,000 signatures because you'll get duplicates, you'll get people that are not out of state, people will sign at two different stores. And then you'll always get Mickey Mouse and whoever that like pretends just is messing with you. So with an initiative to the legislature, which is what our two initiatives do, and we can talk about the content in a minute, I guess. You have from about May until the end of December to turn them in. In fact, today we're turning our initiative signatures in, and you have to get the same number of signatures. 308,000 valid, so close to 380, 390 is minimum recommended. And then you turn it into the legislature itself. The Secretary of State validates the signatures, and then the Secretary of State gives it to the legislature, and then they have a choice of doing a couple of things. They can vote on it and make it law. And they did this in 2024. No, it's a completely one-sided legislature that has been in power for a long time. No one thought they would do anything with our initiatives. We turned in 6 initiatives in 2024. They voted to make 3 of them law, and then sent 3 to the ballot. And so that's what happens. They can either vote them, and they can't change the wording. It's just an up or down vote yes or vote no. And the likelihood is they won't even give it a vote if they're not going to vote for it. But they've done it in the past. Or they can ignore it or not vote on it. And in that case, it goes on the ballot the following November. So that's a simple process. There's something, and for other states that are doing this, they may have something. We have a referendum clause, which is much easier. You only need about 200,000 signatures, and it's a straight repeal of a law. But we have a note in our law that says, if the legislature deems it an emergency, they can put an emergency clause into any law, and then you can't repeal it by reform. So you can imagine suddenly over the last several years, I don't know, it's like 70 or 80% of any meaningful laws have emergency clauses in them, and no one can explain why. So that's the basic process, right? And then if the negative on an initiative to the legislature is that it could be overturned the following year. The legislature, once it's law, they can do something with it. If it's to the people, you've got a 2-year window, and that's what they did with one of our initiatives. They voted for it in January of 24, and then in January of 25, they completely gutted it. The parents' rights, they just gutted it, and they took all the. Oh, sorry, I've got a. I was worried this was going to happen. I've got a UPS delivery guy that my dog thinks needs to be put into dog hell. Hang on one second. We're recording. Sorry.
Cori, this is what you need to do. You need to yell at your cat. Tell your cat to get off your face.
All right. Sorry about
Okay.
that.
No, you're fine. Can I ask a couple questions?
Please ask away.
Okay. And if you don't know the answer, maybe Lauren or Cori can look it up. Does every state in the United States have some mechanism like this that we know of?
No, I don't believe so. I think it's in the 20s, the number 27, something like that, number of states that actually have the initiative process.
Okay. And if you're a state that doesn't have an initiative process and you want there to either be a new law or a bad law to go away, you have to directly get your elected officials to do that work.
That's right. Or diselect them, right? I mean, it's a much harder process. And the interesting thing is that in neighboring here in Washington State, it's completely controlled by the Democrat Party. It has been for almost 40 years. The legislatures, as you would be shocked to find out, hate the initiative process and have tried to make it harder to do. But in neighboring red state, Idaho, where the Republicans have been dominant for 40 years, they hate the initiative process, right? So this isn't, the initiative process tends to be whoever's in power hates it. And that, I think, is the very essence of the tool. If you're in a state where one party controls everything, this is a way for citizens to sort of break through the power. It doesn't change everything, and it needs to be limited. Like if you try to do too many things with it, it'll get messy. But this very simple targeted tool to push the legislature to stop or to fix broken stuff.
And Washington State and Idaho are right next to one another, but you have a blue state and a red state that are, sounds like, are deeply entrenched.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, you get, and it's, like the sort of a little bit of a difference is that Idaho is a bright red state all over the place. Washington State is deep blue in Olympia and Seattle, and those voters can simply outvote the rest of the state, which is slightly purple as you get out of Seattle, and then goes bright red on the other side of the mountains. So the people in in Eastern Washington, in the Spokane area and that area, uh, it sometimes they sort of feel like whatever they do doesn't matter and they feel disenfranchised. So the initiative is a process that allows them to participate in our democratic process, in our electoral process, where normally their vote almost doesn't matter.
Okay. Lauren or Cori, any other questions on like the basic process? Real quick.
I have a couple.
Okay.
So 308,000, I guess that's some proportion of the population of the state at the last census.
That's right. It's based on the number of voters in the last gubernatorial election. It's a percentage of it. I can't remember what the percentage is, but it's and so it changes. When we did it 2 years ago, it was 321,000. Then we had a really low turnout in the gubernatorial election, and now it's 309. And if we keep getting the tax and persecute anybody that's stupid enough to start a business here policies, if those keep going, not that I have an opinion about anything, maybe they'll go lower because people keep moving to Idaho.
These are wet signatures. They can't be digital signatures.
Yes, correct. And in fact, that's actually a good point that you've dipped into. They have to be wet signatures. Number two, they have to be printed on these not regular size sheets of paper. Like there's a prescribed sheet of paper, prescribed form. You can only have 20 lines on each sheet. You have to have a bunch of disclaimers. You have to have the entire initiative printed on the back. And so sometimes, and this may be important in your state, sometimes people will say, "Oh, we're gonna put a PDF of this online, and you can download it and print it out and get your friends and family to sign it." Here in Washington, that is a stupid thing to do because people don't pay attention. They don't follow instructions. They print it out on 8 by 11 sheets of paper, and then you get all these signatures collected that aren't valid because the Secretary of State can't recognize them because they're on the wrong size paper. So if someone is thinking about doing initiatives, there's a whole list of things we can talk about on just that. But things to be wary of is exactly this. Like it's got to be what are the rules for the initiative, and you can bet your money that the opposition will try to attack you on any little slip up that you might have.
So it's got to be on special sized paper.
Yes, I don't know it's bigger than it's I don't even know what the numbers are. We got a printer that goes and buys all the paper that he can from the different states, so we've got enough to print it out.
And then it's got to be double-sided.
Double-sided. On the back side, you have to print the entire initiative wording so that people can read it.
So they make you really like dot your I's, cross your T's.
100%.
Yeah.
And maybe then they do. Go ahead.
Each
maybe
piece of
just
paper. No, go ahead.
Just before we get too far into it, maybe we want to talk about a little bit about what the ballot initiatives are so our listeners understand why it's so relevant to what we're...
I had another question though. Brian, how did you get into doing ballot initiatives?
I think I'm a glutton for punishment. I think that may be the starting point. And then secondly, I've mentioned before, one of my kids has something called ODD, oppositional defiance disorder.
No, he doesn't.
And I think, right? What's that?
No, he doesn't.
Well, that yeah, you're fair, but
Cori,
well, so let me put it a different way. That was a diagnosis that was given, and I suspect we could call it old school. It's just a stubborn, defiant streak, and it's certainly the apple didn't fall too far from the tree on that one. So the fact that they were doing stupid things, I felt like it needed to be pushed back on. And I think there's a bigger picture though. I moved here from California because they were the taxes just kept going up and up and up, and regulation was going up. And my partners and I, we run a investment fund in Japan, and we figured at one point, if you count all the payroll taxes and all of that you pay, if you count, like Social Security, the employee pays whatever 8%, and then the employer matches it. So this is money that literally you're paying this tax. When we calculated all the taxes that we were paying in California, for every dollar that we earned, we were paying about 67 cents in taxes. And why why run a business like that? So we moved up here because it was relatively at the time tax free or much tax lighter. Our employees all got a big boost in life, both in wages because the taxes. Everyone got like a 14% increase in pay just by moving up here. So we moved our whole business up here, right? And Washington, I know you were going to talk about this later, but Washington was kind of a libertarian left state. I tend to be, my politics tend to be sort of libertarian right. But libertarian left is a infinitely livable political regime, and then the state is just so beautiful. So you add that, and it was just a great place to move here. And then it started changing, and it was that there was sort of a takeover of the left by a progressive, a very very aggressive progressive group of senators and House members, and crazy stuff started happening here.
About what time?
I think there's a couple of things that happened. I think there was the perfect 1-2 punch of George Floyd, right, and Black Lives Matter, coupled with COVID. Those things coupling up together did two things in our state. Number one is they allowed a very anti-police, pro-criminal. The net result was that of sort of, oh, we've got to get rid of the police, we've got to defund the police. We had in this state a law that said if this is what it came to, this was actual experiences. Criminals would drive up to a police car, flip off the police, peel out and take off, and the police were not allowed to pursue them because of laws by our legislature. That's stupid. That's crazy. And I did some tracking. Sorry, this is way off topic, but it's part of the initiative process. I did some tracking, and I found that up until the legislature passed this law to prevent police from pursuing criminals, there were about 500 to 600 deaths, highway deaths every year in Washington state. That's a lot, but it was steady, like every year. As soon as this law passed, the immediately next year went well into the 600s, and the second year it went up into the 700s. There was an immediate increase of 100 to 200 people extra that died on the roads because of this law. And we had a family, Amber Goldade, who had lost her daughter because a criminal had sped off from the police. The police couldn't pursue. It did it twice. He came into their neighborhood, and the police were not pursuing him, and he ran over her daughter. And so she was like, "There's no justice. I don't have any way to fight this." Nobody, and she was just. They were devastated. I talked to the parents. As you can imagine, losing your daughter to someone who the police could have picked up. They had him there, and the police couldn't stop him. And he comes in and drives and hits your daughter and kills her. And so we spoke with her, and we got an initiative to force the state to let that off and let local jurisdictions decide whether to pursue or not. And they came with us down to the Secretary of State's office, to the Capitol, because they had tried a bunch of ways to they had petitioned all the legislatures. No one would listen to them. We got the initiative qualified. And in January of 24, we took it to the legislature, and the legislature felt the pressure. They knew they had to. This was too popular with the population. So the legislature passed that law into law, right? This is a long way for your question. How did I get involved in it? It's been this series of things that have happened, right? Just stupid stuff going on here, and who's going to stand up for people? And Amber's family, just devastated by stupid policies that happen in the state. And I think that Olympia does things thinking that they're smart, they're wise, and they're doing this benevolent thing, but they don't think about the people are victimized, right? That by state policy, they find one person that was hurt in a police pursuit, and then they're willing to sacrifice 200 people on the roads, or Amber Goldade's daughter, because of a thing that they want. And so I think that it became crazy because the sort of riots that came out of George Floyd's tragic incident turned into an authority for legislators to legislate sort of anti-safety issues. And then at the same time, Washington State, with COVID, our governor declared emergency powers for 950 days. 950 days. Like, they basically cut the legislature out. We were the longest of any state in the union to do that. And if you look at and really, like, you couldn't go, you had to get a card that showed that you had a whatever, an inoculation to go just to
Vaccination.
vaccination. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. To go to the movie theaters. Like, they, instead of enforcing it by the state, they made, 18-year-old pimply-faced teenagers enforce the vaccination laws, right? Because it was unpopular to have the police do it. They tried that for about a week, and they went, "Oh, we're not doing that." So they enforced it on the restaurants and the movie theaters. And at one point, they were even talking about anybody that doesn't get a vaccination, they should be denied access to a hospital. They were proposing it didn't go through, but that was one of the proposals for legislation. So this crazy thing happened, right? This real takeover that took us from a libertarian place, a libertarian left place, to a very authoritarian left place, and that's happened. Really, it's happened over about the last, well, since like 2017, 18. That's when it sort of started to get crazy.
So what are your initiatives, Brian?
Good question. Now we're into this a ways. We've got two initiatives. The first one is restoration of parents' rights. And this one has a little bit of background. In 24, we had an initiative number 2081 was the initiative number. It went to the legislature. Nobody in the whole state, including me, nobody thought that the legislature would pass this. And it basically, it's a simple Bill of Rights for parents of school children that says, among other things, schools can't keep secrets from parents. If something's going on with your kid, and this right away goes into, people automatically move it to the trans issue, but that's one small piece of what goes on at a school that parents need to know about. So we got this. There were things happening, secrets being kept from parents, not just and abortion and trans rights are the two issues that tend to be the hot topics on this. But there's a ton of things that were going on. There's surveys in Washington State, and really they're not surveys; they're really assessments pretending to be a survey. And they've been snuck into the system in Washington, starting in Seattle, but also in King County. And now I've seen some information that says it's moving to Snohomish and some of the other outer counties. And it's like a 50 to 100 question survey.
And these surveys are being given to the students
as young as 5th grade, 6th grade, right? There's something called Check Yourself.
Yes. And I'm going to segue for just a second here.
You bet.
So in medical, clinical research, in social research and psychology research, I could be a psychologist at a local university, and I could devise a research questionnaire like Brian's referencing, and I want to give it to students in schools. There's a special carve out in IRBs, so oversight review boards, that basically says if I want to do a questionnaire like that at a school, I can do so without using the other channels. So if I wanted to give that as a psychologist to all of the kids that come to my hospital to see me as a patient, I have to get parental consent before I'm able to give that to the kid. Because it's given in schools, there's a weird carve out with IRBs where you can get around the consenting requirements. And what's really frustrating for me about that carve out and that thing is that in medicine, I recognize that if I give you a survey, if I give a whole bunch of 12-year-olds a survey that says, do you feel suicidal? Or have you had unprotected sex? Or do you smoke? And I give that in a medical setting, I intuitively recognize that there can be harms that are done by giving that survey to children without following up. So if I give you a survey and ask you, do you feel suicidal? You say yes. In medicine, then I have to follow up and do something about it because I just identified something that could harm a kid. Also in medicine, if I give you a survey like that, I also have to recognize I could make you feel uncomfortable, scared, worried, not understand, can I say yes here? Can I say no? Can I opt out of doing this? Like there's all of these things built in to protect kids, specifically if it's being done in a medical setting. But we have this really weird carve out in IRBs where we can ask those exact same questions to school, to children in a school setting without any of the protections we give kids in a medical setting. And that's the kind of surveys that are still being given to kids in schools.
Absolutely.
Can you tell
do you
us a
have-
little bit about what
Okay.
was actually on the survey? Like what kind of questions they were asking these kids?
You bet. There's two things that it does. It asks very explicit questions and it also asks open-ended questions. And there's a whistleblower here that chased it down and did an Information Act request and got actual data. So I've seen Excel spreadsheets with the answers from some of these questions. But they would start out, it's just, how's everything? And they'll ask about your home life, right? And like, depending on the age, I just yesterday sort of went through it again. There's like these little smiley faces, or like we do. Like it was a list of things. I can actually pull it up on my like the questions that they asked were. Hang on. I've actually got some here. Where was the? Oh, at home, I sometimes or always experience, and then it has a list of things: eating dinner as a family, spending time together, alcohol, drug use causes problems at home, not knowing where we'll sleep, watching a movie together, taking care of family, staying home alone for a long time, insulting others causes problems at home, right? And it's things that you could make an argument. Well, it'd be helpful as a teacher to know this is going on because I can help my students better. But this stuff goes into a database, and I think there's two really terrible things that happen. And then they'll have like open. So that's one. The other is they'll do things like who's your crush, right? And that's clearly aimed at. Well, let's see. Where did I get? Okay. There's I identify, and it's got male, female, non-binary, transgender, questioning my gender identity. Something else fits better, prefer not to answer. This is for fifth grade. And so they're people, and I don't think it belongs in school. Like I don't have any problem with doctors and whatever, with parents' permission doing this, but this is, it has this, and then it'll go into who do you have a
Again,
crush
when you're
on?
talking about consent, though, did the parents get sent that survey out 2 weeks in advance and say, would you like your child to participate in this research? Because
That's what it is. Yes.
research.
And it's on, what do you
Or
call
do
it?
you want to, and to me, it has to be opt-in, not opt out.
It's
The parent
opt out
then has-
here. Yeah, it's
Right,
here. It's
but the
opt out. So
parent would
parents don't
have
know
to
about
say-
it.
Right. They don't know. Like,
Right.
It-
It's a negative consent. So if the parents, they send out something among the millions of things you get from your school. Oh, and by the way, and it's on the computer of the kid, so they sign in and they can change the research at any time. They can add questions at the back and go, oh, we've updated this. Would you fill these out? Right. And it's a couple of questions that they're having add. They're full on performing a research experiment on kids in school.
Yes.
And it's not peer reviewed. But there's two things that to me are really, really even more terrible about this. One is it has PII, right? Personally identifiable information. And that information, if you're so let's assume that most school teachers are good people doing good things, but there are, in this state, we've had, I'm going to start with that assumption, but there are bad ones, and there are ones that are predators. And the reason that they went into it is because they're sort of predators. And we have them in Washington State. We've had millions and millions of dollars paid out to families whose children were abused by teachers. So you can't say it's a zero thing that happens. These teachers now have access to this information. They can look at it and go, oh, look, hey, here's Johnny, whose stepdad is not real close, and mom's. And I saw one of the things, Lauren, to the question.
and I can groom this kid, and I can
Yes,
talk with
exactly.
this kid.
Exactly. I saw
But the
one.
other thing, sorry, Brian,
Go
the
ahead.
other thing here, though, too, just as a parent myself, is that this is also information that I think biases the like the
100%.
school institution.
Yep.
It has built-in bias, but
Yep.
it also, I think, blurs that line into where is my family privacy and what is it that I send my child to school for? I'm sending my
Correct.
child to school, for these specific things. I've also seen questionnaires and been questioned by a school before. I had a phone call not that long ago where I was asked to identify whether or not there are guns in my home by the school district. I refused to answer the question.
Yeah.
Why does the school district need to collect data on that. Like those are
It
things
goes
that
into
are,
an assessment. Yeah, it'll get a little check mark by your kid. Oh, right.
yep, yep. And it's intrusive, and it, to me, it doesn't, you're not showing me the benefit or what you're doing with that
Right.
information that somehow benefits our society or the kids.
And I think what you said, this last thing that you just said, I think is really in some ways to me the nub of what's going on here. There's an arrogance within the schools that government employees know better than parents what's good or best for their kids. And so
Yeah.
that's part of the whole secrecy of parents is we as government employees will decide when you need to know what you need to know, and we need to know everything about you. So back to Lauren's question, one of the questions I saw was an open-ended, tell us about your home life. And I saw a response from a kid who said, I don't get along with my mom very well. And now I'm imagining like a 14-year-old whose mom told them, you can't go to the movie tonight, or you got to get your homework done, or whatever. And so they're sort of pissed off at mom. Here's a great chance to get back at her. They're answering surveys when they're pissed off teenagers, which we know is going to be very accurate and emotionally sound. Um, and the kid said, my mom's, I don't get along with my mom. And besides that, my mom's an alcoholic and I think she does drugs, right? That's now on the school form, and it's in a permanent record in this assessment, right? And so then a teacher has access to that. Okay, here's a child with a weak attachment at home, right? And so for predators, there's something. The second thing that's happening in Washington State is the information was being sold, and I don't think it's so much about the money, but it was being sold to King County and then to Seattle Children's Hospital. And as you're aware, Seattle Children's Hospital has been right at the forefront of all the gender surgeries, and like the bulk of them have been done at Seattle Hospital, as well as the hormone treatments. And so Seattle's getting this, and then what the school would do is use that information, as you said earlier. Once they get something, I'm suicidal, I'm thinking that maybe I'm a girl, I'm not happy at home, something like that. Then there's an assessment being made. It's not a survey. There's an assessment being made and a diagnosis being given by what I think are probably unqualified individuals at the school. And then a referral is being made. And in Seattle or in Washington, we have something called the mature minor doctrine. And the Olympia sort of hides behind this. The mature minor doctrine was implemented in the 1990s. Initially, it was for abortion, to allow 12 and 13-year-old, and initially it was like 16-year-old girls, to allow them to have an abortion without having to tell their parents. So you can take a child to a judge can rule, and I don't think it's a big formal hard process. The judge can rule that the child is mature enough to make decisions on their own. It is illegal to get a tattoo. It is illegal to vape if you're under 18, right? It is illegal for a teacher to even give an aspirin or a Tylenol to a child that's under 18. There is no mature and minor doctrine for those issues. But for some of the health issues, for an abortion or for anything with the transgender surgery or hormones, they can go and get a mature minor ruling, and they have no obligation whatsoever to tell the parents. They even last year they passed a law, and I'm not even addressing any of this stuff. This is just stuff that's I've run into as I've gone down this rabbit hole. They passed a law that allowed schools to basically put the kids in a safe space, because all the kid has to do is say, "Oh, my parents won't understand," and parents won't understand means therefore they're abusive and I need protection, right? And this is the conceit. There's a conceit that the parents will automatically not love their child, that the parents don't have a right to sort of be upset, confused, trying to figure it out themselves, that there's no allowance for that to happen as the parents work out, as a kid comes to them. And number three, that the parents won't seek what's best for their child, right? And that conceit has given the state a lot of authority to just do without telling. And the most famous thing was one of our senators, Jamie Peterson. You can look him up online. He went on national TV, Jamie Peterson. He's a Senate Majority Leader here. Online, he went on and said, "Hey, look, in Washington State, if a child is old enough to get pregnant, we do not have to tell the parents. The parents have no right whatsoever in any decisions that go on with that." And he expanded it, says any healthcare decisions, if they're old enough to get pregnant, they're old enough to make their own decisions, and parents do not have a right to be informed, nor do they have a right to have a say in the outcome. That's crazy. And that's what our initiative. I went as lightly as I could, right? I said they have a right to know. I really think they should be involved. If you're under 18, your parents need to be involved. And we had a carve out. Of course, there are real abuse cases, so we included a carve out. If there is abuse, the schools don't have that obligation, right? This isn't. I don't want to put kids in danger by any means, but I think the schools are putting them in danger by having a law and a doctrine of mature minor that says parents not only don't have they in some cases you'd get problems for even telling the parents. And what our initiative does is well, now let's back up just a second. So we passed this law. The legislature, overwhelmingly bipartisan majority, passed this law this initiative that we sent to them in 2024. And then in 25, they really, just with a wink and a nod to their constituents, gutted all the parental notification parts. And so our initiative basically says, all the stupid things that you did in 2025, that law goes out and it returns to our original 2024 law.
So that's the parental rights initiative.
Parental rights. Yep.
You also have a sports initiative.
The second one is girl sports, protecting girl sports. And this one seems pretty straightforward to me, but it engenders the most, no pun intended, the most opposition and hate and violence of anything I've seen since we've been doing this.
We should come back to that violence in a minute and that hate, but tell us about what the initiative is first.
So it quite simply, right now in Washington State, it is required by law already before the initiative that every student athlete has to get a physical from their physician before they can play sports. And that physical says this is what your sex is, right? Not what your gender is or not what you claim your gender is, but what your sex is. And it can be, if it's your pediatrician that you've had since you were 8, they know. And so there's nothing that needs to be done. They just sign the form. All our initiative does is says that form that you already have to do, you present it to the school in order for you to be eligible to play sports, and only girls can play in girls sports. And that's the focus of the initiative. And so it's actually really minimal in what it changes in the law. It just basically says the physical that you're already required to get, that already states your sex, has to be presented in order for you to play in girl sports. Go ahead.
Did you create this initiative because you were seeing in Washington State that there were boys who were identifying as girls playing and taking away awards or positions or in the girls category?
Yeah, there was in Spokane. In fact, the Washington Post just did this big feature, tearjerker article on Garcia,
Brian,
right?
That's our first segment today. We just recorded a long conversation about that piece. I'd love to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your perspective?
Well, the funny
you read
thing. What's that?
You read the piece.
Yeah, it's real sympathetic to this, but it ignores all the girls that are impacted by it, right? And that's, to me, this goes back actually a little bit further. When this first came up and they started talking about, there were 2 issues, right? Allowing transgender women into women's bathrooms, and then the other was the sports. And I went to an Ivy League college, and on my Facebook page, where I'm the sole voice of anything that's not super left wing, I said, look, this is a question for the feminists on here. If biological men are allowed to play in women's sports, what will happen to women's sports? And this was years ago, right? The immediate response, the overwhelming, scathing response, was, oh my gosh, you are such a bigot. First of all, you're a bigot for even asking the question. And the second was, it will never happen. There will never be boys that will claim to be a girl to play on a girl's team, right? And that was maybe 10 or 15 years ago, right? That this was when it was first beginning to be an issue at all. And it wasn't a national, it was just starting to sort of happen. And what I've watched in Washington State was this progression of, it'll never happen, to, well, okay, maybe it happened, maybe there's just one, right? And then it was multiple. So, okay, so it's maybe a few, but it's only a few. why are and they go immediately to why are you making a mountain out of a molehill, right? The Secretary of State here said, hey, there's only 5 to 10 trans girls doing this in the entire state, which first of all is a lie. But even then, like 5 to 10 means you're off by 100% on your estimate, which means you don't know what the number is. And they purposely not tracked it. So I started hearing from parents, right? And oh, there's at least 5 that have been in the Spokane system. And I met a junior high coach who said, oh, in my district alone, I know there's 4 or 5 boys in junior high, right? But they were all completely terrified and afraid to say anything about it because they absolutely would lose their job. And so I'm listening to all this. And then Riley Gaines came to Washington State and spoke, and she sat at my table, and she said a couple of things that really, really just resonated. My kids are out of the school system, so they're not, I don't know if they're safe, but they're not in that world where someone can hurt them because of what their father says or thinks, right? And they're not right now impacted by what's going on in girls' sports. And so it kind of wasn't my issue. I wasn't like, oh yeah, I got to fight this fight. But Riley got up there and she said 2 things. One is she said, all these, I get these letters from girls' moms saying, hey, this is happening to my daughter. Can you say something about it? And her response was, well, why don't you say something about it, right? I can't fight everybody's fight, and it struck, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. We're fighting that fight. And then the second thing she said was, where are all the dads? And it resonated in my dad's soul. I mean, it went right down, way past the dad jokes, right to my soul, right? And it struck me, and I'm like, yeah, that's right. If the dads don't stand up, and in Washington State, I think dads had been kowtowed into, don't mess with this, it's not worth it. And even the kids at school, no, dad, don't say anything, because they're afraid of the pain they'll get at school from persecution. So that pushed me to go, well, let's look at this thing, right, and start talking. And then it was what really has made a difference here is the female athletes, the girl athletes that have been bold enough to actually say, hey, this isn't right. We've got some really great spokespeople here, some girls that have put their happiness on the line because the school administrators attack them, right? I mean, Frances down in Tumwater was threatened by the WIAA, the Washington Interscholastic Athletic Association. She was interviewed for possible hate crimes for saying that the boy, when she was like 15, and this 18-year-old adult male walks into her locker room from the opposing basketball team while she's getting dressed. And she was opposed to it. And she said, I'm not going to play. And the fact that she was not going to play was evidence of a hate crime, from the school's point of view. She didn't get charged with it, but she got investigated for it. And people were sending emails to her family and to her, telling her to kill herself and that she was terrible and like really horrible things. And that, good grief.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. Did Casey Parks reach out to you for the Washington Post article?
No, absolutely not. They should have, though, right? Because we're running this. Nope. That would be
okay. So you're running So let's just spell it out real clear. You're running the initiative in the state with the runner that she wrote the national article about, and you're running the initiative, and she didn't even reach out to you.
No, if she would have, I would have called that a random act of journalism, right? No, that's in fact, until you said that right now, I hadn't even thought about that because I don't see, I'm not like the national spokesman for it. I'm just trying to do this thing to fix Washington. So I don't see myself in that sort of spokesman role. But as you said, I'm like, yeah, like that's crazy. Like she's in Washington State.
Correct. For months.
This is our issue. And we've been running this issue, and it's something that's getting, being seen all around the United States. No, she didn't, no contact with us at all.
She actually makes a point to say in the article that she reached out to one of this young man's competitors, and she didn't respond. But there are plenty of female athletes in Washington who would have responded that she could have reached out to.
Yep.
there were plenty of other people she could have tried to get another perspective from,
Yeah, she wasn't looking for that.
but
Yeah, yeah.
exactly, she wasn't
Didn't fit the
looking.
narrative. We don't want some act. Again, we don't want random acts of journalism to happen. So
Okay, so I want to
Could,
go
could
ahead,
I ask
Cori.
another follow-up to that, Jamie?
Yeah.
Have any local Washington reporters talked to you?
no, and for sure, no, none of, and there's the mainstream media here would consist primarily of the Seattle Times, and then
Yeah.
I call them the KKK, the Como King, and can't remember what the other one is. There's three news TV stations in Seattle. They haven't at all. And what I think the only time they've covered anything is when we've had um, when there was a hit and run from somebody that tried to steal some initiatives, came up, stole the initiatives, ran back to their car, sped off, hit a shopper on their way out. So we got news coverage on that. But their coverage is on that piece of it, and only there if it's like if it bleeds, it leads kind of thing. But there's been no look at this at all. And I know that's the OSPI, which is the superintendent of schools here, Chris Reichdahl, has basically come out. He's like, well, look, this whole gender thing is it's it's a complicated scale of things. We're starting with girls on one end and boys on the other, and so our schools are going to reflect that. That's kind of been his stance, and anything that goes against that gets wrath, right? Gets political wrath. So no, the answer is no. I'm trying to even think. Who actually has been good is KUOW. They're the local. They're right smack in the heart of Seattle. They're the former NPR affiliate here. And there's a woman there named Libby Dankman who I know she's left leaning, but she's fair and she'll ask good questions. But and there was an interview that she did with about an hour-long interview she did on the air. And during the interview, as we were talking about this, I kept using the word biological boys. And she said, oh, look, I got to do a caveat here. I've got listeners who are going to scream and yell at us for platforming you, right? For even saying those words, biological boy. And it was clear that like she gets hate for doing this. They've actually been surprisingly the best coverage of it. And then there's several conservative podcasters, and Brandy Cruz covers it. And there's an organization called Center Square, which is sort of a center-right AP news service for Washington State. They've covered things, but the mainstream, the ones that can be read in Capitol Hill and Seattle, none of them have.
So
Okay.
you actually had incidents where your signature gatherers were attacked on the
Yes,
street.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So this is not just being called names. People are physically coming after people that are
Right.
literally just volunteers gathering signatures.
I think
There's both volunteers, and we had paid signature gatherers to be clear. And this might go back to your earlier comment. Like I tried to do 11 initiatives with all volunteers 2 years ago, right, in 23. But I didn't know what the problem is. I didn't know 400,000 people, right? And when it rains, as soon as it starts raining, it's much harder to stand out in front of people. So, and we can talk about the cost and the process of this, but I brought in some paid signature gatherers. They go all around. They're in California. They're in, right? Whichever state they're in, these guys are really professional and good at doing it. And we usually use them to get a portion of the signatures. And those guys were the lightning rods this year because we had a hard time getting volunteers who were willing to sit out there because of this violence issue.
So you essentially had to hire professionals who understand the situation and knew how to collect signatures and be safe because it's kind of crazy that we're in a position where just people gathering signatures for an initiative
in a democratic,
exactly
what makes it worse, Lauren, in a way, is that the WEA, which is the teachers union, and the ACLU, right, two big champions of civil rights, they funded a group called the Washington Families for Freedom. And I may or may not have changed their logo to be Washington Families for Fascism, but these guys gather people, and they did it right away. They put, hey, if you see any signature gatherers, call this number, right? And describe what they look like and where they're at and what time of day it was. And they did this to us 2 years ago on some of our other initiatives. And we had some grief that came from it. We called it out right away. Look, why are you guys doing this? This is, what's your intent? Why are you doing this? So they took that down, but then they started holding, and we had some people that actually got on their phone calls. They started holding these training sessions where they were trying to recruit shifts of people to go wherever we had signature gatherers, and their wording was very careful. Like they did not advocate go beat them up or do anything like that. They were like, you go and you make your voice heard
and intimidate the shit out of them. And
that's what they were doing. Yeah, they never said that on the phone calls, right? To be fair, that's not what they said. Yeah. But what we saw, like we knew that they were doing that, and then what we saw happen is these people would come and they would stand, 6 feet away and yell and scream, or anybody that came up, they would go, "Oh, you're going to sign that fascist initiative? Oh, you're a fascist, right? You're a bigot." There was throwing like these dart words from the left. And nobody, like, I'm just here to buy some tomatoes, right? I don't want to be called a bigot, and so they scared people off. But then we had, if you start looking at all the incidents, it was one guy runs up, has this altercation, this verbal altercation, gets mad, throws sort of a hissy fit, grabs all the pens so no one could sign, and runs into the store, right? We've had people, in fact, we're just this morning, just before I got on, I was approving a letter that we're sending to the Secretary of State. We have about 100 sheets that were torn or shredded. Like people got up and just tore up all the signatures. And so we painstakingly have taped them back together. We're sending a letter from our lawyer to the Secretary of State saying, hey, here's 100 sheets that were damaged or partially destroyed that we've been able to reconstruct. Yes, they're not, they're not perfect anymore, but they're on the original sheets. We expect you to count these signatures, right? And I got 100 sheets that were damaged that way. And then that doesn't count. We'd have other people come up and just grab clipboards and steal sheets and run off. So that was sort of the first part of it.
Are the signature gatherers wearing body cams or anything?
No, they're not. But what I told them is, as soon as anything starts to happen, pull up your phone and just start filming, just to protect yourself. Start filming. And so if you go on my Twitter feed, although I post too damn much, so you got to way back down there. But we started recording it and just putting it out there so that it would get attention, because the press wouldn't cover it, but we would, every once in a while something would happen and boom, we'd get 100,000 views, and so they'd have to kind of say something about it. What got everybody's attention is when we had this hit and run, that made statewide news and forced people to kind of address it. But we have recordings of these people coming up. It's a bunch of angry men for the most part. But there's I get love letters in the mail, and I never was called the C word until this year, and now I've been called an effing C word. I don't think I even knew what that word meant until I was probably 22 or something after. Anyway, but so I grew up in rural Arizona, but like, so we get that. But I'll give you some other things. There was one guy that was a signature gatherer. Some people came up, intimidated him, a group. When he got done with his shift, he got in his truck and drove home, and he noticed that people were following him. So he pulls into a
oh wow.
They were stalking him. So he pulls into a parking garage, calls the police, or not just a parking lot, calls the police. The police come. They're like, well, there's nothing we can do, right? So he drives home. They follow him home, and he gets out of his car and watches them drive by, right? And that night, this was sort of stupid on his part, he left initiatives in his truck, and that night they came back and broke into his truck and stole them all. And then more recently, we've had one lady took a shopping cart and rammed it into one of the signature gatherers. She bruised up her whole arm. She had to go to the hospital. And then we had
the signature gatherer had to go to the hospital.
Yeah. There's police. We filed police reports on all of these, right? Her arm is just like sort of purple here where she got rammed. One lady got tackled by a guy. Like he got angry and like tackled her. Her boyfriend came and chased the guy off, right? We got, and then Tammy,
not like racketeering.
I just want to interrupt you for a minute though. a paid signature gatherer, from my understanding, is somebody who really needs the work.
Yeah. Yep.
They are hustling.
Yep.
They're probably not employed full time in a, they're not the working from home in their office slippers and they just go out to be a signature gatherer that day. This
Business
is
feeding their
somebody,
kids.
this is somebody who is underemployed, low wage. This is
Not in
something
Washington State. It's we pay it. They're not low wage here, but yeah, they would be, right? And the signature gathering process allows them to make a decent wage.
but this is their
Hustle,
job. They are
hard work every day
hardworking
outside.
and they're
Absolutely.
trying to do
Yep.
their job.
Yep.
And they might not even, this might not even be a personal issue for them. They might just have been hired to do this work, to be a part of the democratic process, and they're being physically attacked.
Yes,
Have you
that's
had any of your signature gatherers who knew nothing about this issue, had no idea what they were even gathering signatures on, and
no,
have now been
no. They
like,
have to know. They have to know because they have to talk to
okay,
people. So number one is they have to know, right?
okay,
And for the most part, if people don't agree with it, they'll go to another state. They won't come. If they really don't agree with it, they won't do it. So
okay,
we find that most of the people agree with us at some degree, and they have to convince people that this is worth your time to sign this initiative because people will ask them questions, right?
okay.
But we did get like there was some one of the interesting things has been that the signature gatherers are from all over the United States. They're all different colors of people, right? And that kills the left. They're like, you just brought in black people so that you would look like you're, like something that they would do. They're accusing us of. I don't pick the people. We hire a company that hires all the people. We had at one store in Tumwater, we had several black kids that were doing it, and I say kids, they were in their 20s probably, and sort of white uptight liberals came up to them and called them racist, right? And they're like, what? Like they'd never been called a racist before until they came Washington State. And like this isn't a race issue even, but they were being called racist and harassed and called worse names, right?
So basically, you're piquing an entire generation of signature gatherers right now on the transition.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
In the final kind of minutes we have, here's the three questions I want to ask, and Cori and Lauren, if you have any more, chime in. I do want to get a sense of how much does this cost?
Okay.
How much does it cost per signature? Is that basic over the United States? And then I also want to understand, where are you at with numbers? Where you're at in the timeline. Turn in, I think, happened. And then
It's happening in a couple of hours.
that's amazing. Okay. So where you feel like your numbers are at going into turn in. And then you've run these other initiatives. I just want to get a sense of, do you feel like this is the way forward, that we're going to have to use this kind of strategy in states that are similar to Washington? So those are my kind of final points.
So on the money, when we started out, this is another thing that got my brain. So my business brain started thinking about this. They came and they're like, hey, we should do an initiative. I'm like, how much does it cost? And we got to raise the money. And it was like $20 roughly. It was like $20 a signature. And the price generally was like $15 to $20 per signature when I started. And what would happen is these.
So you need like 380,000 signatures to make this happen.
400,000, yeah.
And the cost roughly was
$8 to $10 million.
Wow.
Right. It was insane. That was what the cost was. It's not what I'm paying. It's not what I'm doing. And what would happen is these initiative hustlers would come in and they go, hey, we'll do an initiative for you. But it's like there's someone that's sort of famous that comes in. Oh, she's never lost, but she tells all the money people, hey, I'll do it for you. It's going to cost $20 to $30 million. I won't do it unless you raise that money, and then I'll come in and do it. Right. That's her. And so like if you look at, just as a point of reference, Republican spending on the governor's race is about $3 million each time. So we've spent over the last And the last one was like 5. So 5 plus 3 plus 3. For the last 3 governor's elections, we've spent $11 million total trying to get a governor elected. These initiative hustlers, and this is a real caution to anybody, the initiative hustlers will come in and tell you, you got to raise $20 to $30 million for one. And I said, that's stupid. That's crazy. That's insane. I can do it better. So I tried the first year to do it with all volunteers, and I failed. I needed 400,000. I got 100,000 per initiative. I collected 1 million signatures, but it was only 100,000 each because I was doing like 11 of them, right? But part of what I did is running multiple initiatives is part of the key to what I did to break the system. If you run, so in 2024, we ran 6 initiatives, and we ended up paying $3 per initiative, per signature, right? So wow. If a signature gatherer was out there gathering signatures, if they got all 6, they got $18 per person, right? And that got them close enough to what they were getting before for one initiative, right? That they went, okay, we'll do it for $3, right? And that's become the new standard. And I know that the $3 per signature. Go ahead.
I don't understand what you're saying. So the signature gatherers are paid per signature.
Yes, correct. And they can make like a really good, go ahead, finish your question.
Like there's a standard rate per signature?
There's a market rate. Yeah, but yes. So the standard rate, the market rate was about $20 per signature. And it might, if it's a slow time, you might be able to negotiate them down. But what they would typically do is, and there's all kinds of, like, these people are really good, but they also play tricks. You know, we found a really good company that works with us, but they'll play tricks. They'll be like really slow until you're at the end when you're desperate and you're like, okay, I'll pay $20 a signature, right? And the cost sometimes will go up even higher.
So it's like surge pricing.
Completely. So running the initiative, like if someone's going to do this, they should really talk to us because we've gone through all the shenanigans. Like there's people that like we code our initiative sheets so that I can tell if it's a volunteer or if it's a paid signature gatherer, because there's bad players in every industry. So some of the bad players would go to events where we had volunteers, and they would say, oh, I'm from Let's Go Washington, I'm supposed to collect your signature sheets, right? And they would collect those and turn them in and try to get paid for them, right? Wow. So there's more than, like, this is not an easy thing. No, you can't just go out and just do this. It's not just easy, right? There's mistakes that can be made. So we would have them, we would code the sheets. So if they turned in volunteer sheets, we'd say, no, these are volunteer sheets. I'm not paying you for those, right? And we have stuff that we do in mail. So the first thing I did was do multiple ones at the same time. And that allows for you to get more done for the price that will be attractive to the signature gatherers, right? The second thing that we did, and this is what we're working on this year, and I'm still working on this, is once you do it one year, you've got a group of people that signed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many initiatives. We sent mail out to those that signed 5 or 6 initiatives because we knew that this was sort of in their wheelhouse, and we've databased it all now too. So I know this person signed this one, like they signed the girls initiative, but they didn't sign the parents initiative, or they signed the tax initiative, but they didn't sign the social issue, right? I'm sort of tracking them that way so that I can not bug them about things that they're sort of shown lower interest on. And so when we send out the mail, what we found is we had a certain response rate. We did this, tested it last year on stopping the state from banning natural gas. We were pretty successful at getting people to send it in, and they would, there's 20 signatures that you can get on one sheet of paper. They would send on average, it was about 5 to 6 signatures per page. And this year we're like 7, close to 7 per page on those that mailed into us. And so this is a way to get around, like they can't intimidate you if it's going through the mail, right? Sometimes people will get it, and I'll get these kind of these love letters from people that are like that someone's moved, and so they happen to get on our list, and they'll tell me where I'm going to hell and all those things. But for the most part, it gets out of the violence and the threat piece and allows it to be more efficient. We're trying to get that cost down. But the bigger question you're probably asking is, how much does it cost per? If you're starting out and you can get it down to $3 per signature, that's your straight number if you get 100%. I try to shoot for 50% with paid signature gatherers, maybe a little bit more. And then the smart way, if they're starting out, is to do Like if you're required to get, let's say, 300,000 signatures by that many, right? So at 3 times 300,000, that's $900,000, right? And then volunteers get you the extra that you need for your buffer. That's the sort of the smart way to do it. That
Holy
sounds
moly.
like it's about but that's straight for the cost. You got to have there's people that are gathering, and there's got to be people on staff. We're probably at about 1.2 to $2 million per initiative right now to do it. But if you have to buy all of them, you need more money, right? And we're doing so. I'm sort of experimenting with that, but I brought it way down from $20 million down to $1 to $2 million is the zone. I'm hoping I can get it underneath $1 million because I'm working more on this mail thing. But it takes, there's all kinds of mistakes you're going to make. But that's the zone, right? At the low end, you're going to be, let's say, $2 million. At the high end, it's 20, right? But you got to negotiate with the signature gatherers. And frankly, the first couple of years, I funded it, right? Which is, my wife hasn't divorced me. She still loves me, thankfully. Spending all of our kids' inheritance money. I funded it just so that I didn't have to ask anybody for money. Was sort of, I hate, like, I grew up really poor, and that was the worst thing in the world for me, is to ask people for money. But now we're sort of moving into this more aggressive phase to really use it as a tool. This is your last question. I'll get back to the middle one. Your last question was, is this a tool? And I was doing it first to push back. I've now got it into much more of a system where we can hold the legislature accountable. And here's the really important part of it. There's a narrative in blue states. The narrative, if you want to defeat anything that's sort of not uber progressive, all you have to do is say, I call it Trump abortion Tourette's, right? You just go Trump abortion, Trump abortion, Trump abortion. And any candidate that runs, all you have to do that's conservative is say Trump abortion, and they lose, right? In this state, those two issues get you to win. But when you're doing something that has like girls sports, this is an 80-20 issue in this state. It's not a partisan issue. It's not a conservative MAGA thing. It's like moderates will come up, and sometimes like liberals will even come and kind of whisper, Democrat, that kind of thing. You get a broad spectrum of parents that are like, this is dumb. And the parental rights is the same way. So we've chosen, I have purposely tried to pick issues that are crazy, that there's a bipartisan support for. So it's not sort of a MAGA. They can't just tag us with MAGA. They try to, but it falls on deaf ears. We look at the percentage of people that sign our initiatives. And right now, my latest number is that 49% of all the signatures that we've gathered so far, and we've gathered total, we're probably about 850,000 signatures total between the two initiatives on this time, right? Of those, 49 point something percent are Republican, and 49 point something percent are Democrat or independent. And that's this isn't like a 80% Republican signing this. This is 50% of our signatures are coming from people that would never call themselves a Republican, and certainly wouldn't wear a red hat. So that goes to your last point of, as a tool, initiative is a very precise, or it should be a precise little weapon to fix broken things. And the thing that it did, so the teachers union, they're well funded here, right? This is one of the challenges. The teachers union, they rake in $50 to $90 million in Washington state every year from the teachers, and then they spend it on political stuff. And they spent $20 million last year trying to beat us on the initiatives, just overwhelmed us on the air. There was about $50 million in opposition against us. This is another issue. If you do something that's tax related, anybody whose pockets get lined by those taxes staying in place, the unions and some other groups will come out of the woodwork to fund opposition against you. The thing with this one is, this is a bipartisan issue, 80-20 support our way, but there's not a huge amount of money. The teachers unions funded this group, but they put in $50,000, not $2 million to fight against us. So I think it's trying to find that middle subject, right? The issue and something that everybody agrees with. And I think this girls sports one is really one that just, any parent goes, that's just crazy. Anybody that's women that would never vote for a Republican go, yeah, I don't want a guy in my locker room, and I don't want to compete with him. And right, there's safety issues, there's privacy issues. I'm watching Tish go around and just go, this is stupid, right? I think those kind of issues strike across enough that it's hard for them to fight. And it begins to put pressure on a legislature that won't listen. The second thing you asked me was the count. We're at just over 400,000 for the parental rights, right? And that's 400,000 is solid. In our state, they keep a record of the most signatures that have turned in. And of the top 10 right now, let's go Washington. I think we have 6 of the top 10 records for the most signatures ever turned in. The girls' sports will be probably 436, 437. It might be as high as 440, and that'll make it about the 8th highest ever signatures gathered in the state. And that's a big deal, right? That's parents coming out and supporting this, and girls being brave. So these both will go to the legislature. We've got enough signatures for them to qualify. They'll go to the Secretary of State. Oh, and here's another thing for anybody that's thinking about doing it. I bought scanners because I wanted, and we scan in every single initiative. So I have a digital image, right? So because one of the things that happens, you turn them in, and then they've got this process where they validate them. And if they came back and said, no, you don't have enough validation, I scan them all and I validate them myself. I'm paying for that. So these are all things that cost money. But if they question something, I can say, show me the sheet, and I've got the OCR for it, right? And I can, and so it's a way to keep your Secretary of State honest, is by scanning everything, right? These are all these pieces that we've just learned over time. It's worth getting a scanning operation, and it's going to be a lot of work scanning these in, and then doing an OCR so that you scan it in and put it into a database, and then we take that database and we run it against the voter rolls here in Washington State, and that's so that I know before I turn them in, oh yeah, I'm fine because I've got this many that are already validated, right? And we run you'll typically see is you'll probably run about an 80% plus valid rate, if depending on how you do it.
I really want to talk to your IT person. This sounds like such a fascinating set of problems that you've had to overcome, but I don't think that this is the right podcast for that conversation.
We'll do a second follow-up.
I think that you have clearly surpassed or met the goal that you had for signatures going in.
We have. Thanks to, and I got to say thank you to you guys. I mean, this is like we said when at one of our events when you guys came, like a damn Mormon and several lesbians getting together to work on this issue is probably not on anybody's bingo card, right? It's common sense people, and it's not an issue it's not a partisan issue, right? It's really these girls that are getting hurt on this, and parents are being left out. And your voice was really important here. Like this, like when I would just describing you as this college anarchist commune living lesbian woman that worked in a transgender thing. I start out with that, and immediately I got their attention. And she saw this, and she saw what a terrible thing it is. And my issue hasn't been necessarily the transgender thing that's going on, but as I've dived into it, oh my gosh, like these poor girls that are having double mastectomies, and then my gut just you being out there is so helpful. It's a weird way to say it, but you've given me cover to talk about it, because here I am, a white cisgendered straight male, whatever. This isn't I know I'm using that in sarcasm font, right? It's not how I think. It's just Washington State has been a place where you couldn't speak, you couldn't talk, and having an alliance with you guys who see this very clearly for what the terrible thing that it is, allows normal people to talk about it without being afraid, and that's really huge. Because they pigeonhole you, and they'll threaten your company, and they'll try to get you fired, right? And having this coalition makes it something that people can go, okay, I knew this was crazy, and I didn't want to talk about it, but maybe we can now, and that's so huge what you guys are doing. So thank you guys.
Thank you,
Um,
Brian. Go ahead,
one,
Cori.
one of the talks that I give on this topic is that there really isn't very much attention given to the boys who are affected, who are being told that they can identify as girls and are being provided with the entitlements to go in and create disturbances in these spaces. And I advocate often men need to step up and advocate for these boys who are being harmed by the ideology. Brian, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but would you mind saying a word or two?
Yeah. Well, again, this is something I didn't like. It wasn't my space. I didn't understand it. And as we got into this, I began talking to detransitioners, right? And that has really just blown my mind, because there seems to be something that, like, the thing that, like, some of them have said things like, you can't talk about sexual abuse among people that are transitioning. You can't talk about, like, it, because that can't be a reason for anything that they're experiencing. Most of these guys that I've talked to, they've had some sort of adults that have abused them wrongly, right? And so starting off already, this is a horrible situation. And so then they're confused and they don't know what they can trust on adults. And someone talks to them, to these, especially these boys, right? And it seems to be a little bit of a difference. Like, girls, there's a bit of a social phenomena going on with girls, and you can already see the drop off. But these young, and this Ari is the guy here in Washington State I've talked to the most. But then I go on, I see these people talking about it, and the story seems to be the same. Like, they're sort of soft gay men, is the way that he describes it. I was a soft gay boy, and I got talked into this thing, right? And it was, and then you get celebrated, and it seems like it solves all your problems because you're dealing with stuff. So there's clearly a mental health challenge that needs love and support, and they're not getting that.
Just
and so
like the young man in the Washington Post article.
yeah, exactly.
A lifetime of depression.
Yep.
You know,
And this is sold as something, this will solve all your problems. It's rainbows and unicorns. And then they find themselves on the other end of this, going, oh my gosh, I'm sterile now. I may never be able to have kids. In some cases, I'll never be able to even have sexual satisfaction because of this, because of the horrible things I was talked into doing. And I'll tell you, this is not what the initiative is here, and I didn't plan to, I didn't even want to know about this stuff. But as I've learned about it, my heart bleeds for these kids, really. You know, they're the first wave of them, like 17, 18 years ago, was that first wave, and they're all kind of now getting close to 30, going, oh shit, right? I don't know if that's allowed on your podcast, but and I'm a damn Mormon, so I shouldn't be swearing anyway. But that's what's happening, right? They're just going, oh my gosh, what did I do? And then worse yet is the community that welcomed them and loved them, quote, in air quotes, love them, turns on them, right? And so now they're like confused, like they're just in this messy, they had this, adults abused them, then more adults abused them, and then those adults turned on them when they tried to get their life back. And I think I think there's two things. I think there's a bunch of people that were victims of this that need some love and support to sort of figure out what they do next, right? And where they go. And I also think there's a huge liability sitting there for schools and states who encouraged it or allowed it. I believe that we're going to see a bunch of, like, I think we're going to see lawsuits, right? And they're not wrong to sue the school for if your school pushed that. I think you're liable, especially if you did it sort of without parents, or in a lot of cases, like, the parents aren't involved. And so the school does this sort of parental responsibility thing, not responsibility. They take control sort of and shepherd people into bad places. And I think there's lasting psychological and physical damage, not to mention the sort of financial damage it's going to cost society. That's sort of where my limited understanding is that right now, right? And that's,
Yeah. It's funny because, like, much of the media, including that Washington Post article we talked about in our first segment, kind of sets it up that anyone who opposes these boys and girls sports are horrible, uncompassionate bigots.
right.
And I couldn't find that to be further from the truth. I mean, there were so many opportunities where this journalist could have said, well, the argument against it is, and people have, I mean, everybody here on this
Different
podcast
views.
is talking about, listen, you're hurting girls
Yep.
because you're damaging their perception of themselves. You're putting them in unsafe situations with men, and you're robbing them of opportunity. But also, you are harming these boys, physically harming these boys
Yep.
permanently.
Yep.
And that is not mentioned once in that article. And like you said, what happens 10, 15 years from now to Veronica
Right.
when he decides or he realizes that he's been harmed?
Right. Irreparably harmed. Things that
Yeah, it's a tragedy all around, really. And this most recent article just painted it as like this fairy tale where there's, clear monsters and clear heroes, and that's just not the case.
there's something that you guys said, and I've heard from several other groups, that in the Washington state law, when they passed several years ago, they passed a anti-conversion therapy law, which I don't have a problem with that concept. But in it, this is the thing that's really nefarious to me. This was years ago, before this really became an issue. They specifically had a carve out that said, for the purpose of this law, affirming someone's gender shall not be construed as conversion therapy, right? And so they knew what they were doing when they did this. And when I talk to adult gay and lesbian people who say, like, shoot, I was a tomboy, or I liked whatever, playing with dolls or whatever. If they would have gotten a hold of me, I would have been stuck in this system, right? Like older adults say that. And what their sort of beef seems to be is that, like, we're doing conversion therapy on young gay and lesbian kids, right? We're doing conversion therapy, but we're not calling it that because that's tawdry and illegal. But that's what's happening, and and then you can't talk about it, right? Like anyone that's straight is terrified to talk about it. If in a really red state where everyone else is that way, and people are closeted, maybe that, but then it's not a helpful conversation. In a blue state, nobody can talk about it, because if you dare, and it's changing now though, right? And I think you guys are doing a huge move to just allow the thing to be spoken, right? Because it couldn't be. Like, people that might agree, just no way, it's not worth it to talk about it. I think maybe even 5 or 6 years ago, I would have been really nervous about having this conversation because of the nature of what was happening in Washington state.
Yeah.
We're really glad that you've joined the conversation so forcefully and with dollars and with these initiatives. So let's share. You've mentioned it a few times. Your Twitter handle personally is
That
damn Mormon.
Brian Heywood, that damn Mormon. Yeah.
Okay.
I took that name because there were conservatives that didn't like what I was doing, and and it was around this initiative process. They wanted to run an initiative here, and I thought they were doing it stupid. It was going to cost $30 million. I'm like, no way am I giving money to that. And they went around telling everybody, that damn Mormon's screwing us over. So I went, okay, that's I didn't give it to myself. I took it from someone that gave it to me. So
that damn Mormon. And Let's Go Washington is on X as well.
Yep.
And
they can find us online as well. letsgowa.com or Let's Go Washington. Either one will work.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Brian, for being with us today. And we will check in with you again once these initiatives move forward into the next phase.
Well, it's great to be part of the Courage Coalition. So thank you guys for the attention and your support.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this first episode of 2026. It was a little bit long, but I hope you found some value in it. Before we go, I want to briefly come back to the Washington Post piece that we discussed today. What was so disturbing for me was not just the framing, but it was the complete failure to act in the best interest of this young man at the center of it. The institutions and adults who claimed to be his supporters allowed him to compete in girls' sports, but also isolated him socially and then presented his deprivation and hardship as evidence of their moral virtue. None of us should be surprised when young men raised this way might go on to become angry, unstable, or destructive to themselves or to others. This young man was a sophomore in high school when he was given synthetic estrogen at the moment when the adults around him failed to ensure that he had the basics of stability in his housing, his safety, or simply one hot meal a day. Lauren often says that we've entered a new dark age, and this story captures that reality perfectly. A complete collapse in scientific and rational reasoning, paired with real material deprivation happening in plain sight. We have the language of progress everywhere, and yet starvation, neglect, and abandonment sit just beneath the surface, ignored, or worse, from the Washington Post, reframed as virtue. This article is meant to ask readers to feel sympathy, but it never asks any of the hard questions. Why the people who claimed to champion him failed to protect him in the most fundamental ways. And the outcome of this served no one, not the girls forced to compete against him, and not the boy himself. We did seriously reach out to Casey Parks and invite her to come on the show to discuss her reporting, because we do believe that engagement matters. Legacy outlets like the Washington Post set the tone for national coverage. I want to add, in part, I was challenged because I was unable to find a public-facing email address for Casey. And when I sent her a DM on X, she refused to provide me with one. That is not how journalists demonstrate that they are accountable to the public. If you found today's conversation valuable, please like, comment, or subscribe. It genuinely helps more people find our show. And share this episode with someone who needs a clearer view of what's happening beneath these headlines. As always, thank you for listening. Stay informed and ready to dissent.